Now on the top of Samach Gimel Amid Beis. And the Brisa is explaining that one could have thought that if you shecht chulin bifnim, okay, that's chulin ba'azara, then you should be chayav from the following kal v'chomer. Listen carefully to the kal v'chomer. If kachim that had a heter of shchita lechutz when they were chulin, is nevertheless, if he shechts it b'chutz, he's chayav for shchutei chutz. How much more so chulin that never had a moment in time where it was mutter to shecht it b'fnim. Certainly, it should be chayav for shchitas pnim. However, the pasuk says, with regard to shchutei chutz, by Yikra Yud Zayin, lahakriv karban, and the Torah designates the word karban for shchutei chutz, and you're only chayav for shchutei chutz on a karban, but on chulin you're not chayav, even if you would be makriv it bifnim. So the Gemara raises the following objection: meaning, if we're going to perhaps suggest that you're chayav on shchitas chulin bifnim, which is one man diyoma that you're chayav, then we're not going to darshan the word karban to exclude shchitas chulin bifnim, but we have another purpose for the word karban, and that is from the word karban shomea ani, I will derive shchutei chutz afilu if he shechts kodshei berek habayis. This is a pella. A man designates an animal for berek habayis, meaning for hegdesh to sell it and take its value and use it for building the Beis Hamikdash. And he took this animal and he shechts it outside of the Azor. And now we're going to try to prove that the word karban in the Torah, the biblical use of the word karban, includes even hegdesh kiddushas domin, which is otherwise known as berek habayis. So he was magdish behemos l'tzorach berek habayis, and they're not royal akrava al mizbeach. And how can I prove to you nikru karban, that even an animal that was designated for berek habayis is considered a karban in biblical Hebrew? Ke'inyan shenemar, in the parsha of Milchemes Midian, and with regard to the booty, the shalal that Bnei Yisrael took after the war, after the victory and the defeat of the Midianim, it says, "Vanakrev es karban Hashem." And I'll read the whole pasuk. Vanakrev es karban Hashem ish asher matzah chli zahav etz ada vitzamid tabas agil vechumos. Everything that's listed here in this pasuk is not only la krava gam mizbeach. It doesn't lend itself to kedusha guf mizbeach. All it could be, and the only way you could justify karban Hashem as the heading over all the different cases that we have here listed in the pasuk, is based on the principle that even kedushas berek habayis is considered a karban. Talmud Lomar, how do we know that even though berek habayis is called karban, nevertheless it's not included in the Isur of shchutei chutz? Talmud Lomar vel pesach ol moed lo hevi o. And the word heavy o is coming to emphasize yes to the exclusion of no. Kol haroy lepesach ol moed, that gets a yes, and therefore chayav ola b'chutz. If he shechts it outside, since it was roy lepesach ol moed, he's chayav for shchutei chutz. But kol she'eino roy lepesach ol moed, ein chayav in a love. If he shechts something b'chutz, not chayav for something that's Eino roy lepesach ol moed, as we've said over and over again. Fine. So from this, we're going to learn that if he shechts kodshei berek habayis b'chutz, he's potter. Even though it's called a karban, since it's not asid lava liol moed likari b'fnim, therefore it's not included under shchutei chutz. Now the Bryce asks the following question: Otzi elu she'ein ruim lepesach ol moed v'lo otzi soya mishtaleach shu roy lavo al pesach ol moed. In other words, I understand the Eino Roy LePesach Ol Moed in those cases of Bedek Habayis and they're excluded from Shkutei Chutz because they have the status of Kodshei Bedek Habayis, and therefore they're not Roy LePesach Ol Moed. But now he asks a rhetorical question: below Otzi, should we not exclude from the din of Shkutei Chutz Soya Mishtalech? Kevon Shu Roy Lovo El Pesach Ol Moed. We'll bring him into the Ol Moed. This he goes right. Today Lahagril Olav, in order to set up a lottery between him and his fellow colleagues, and then they'll recite Vidui on this Sawyer before they send it out to the Azazel. And the Shochet, who chefs the Sawyer Mishtaleach, and he's Misvada Olav before he sends it out to the Azara. Vashochet es Sawyer Mishtaleach Bachutz Yechaya. And the premise of the Gemara is that I will exclude Kodshe Bedek Habayis, it's not Roy LePesach Ol Moed, but I will not exclude from the Chiyuv, the din of Shkutei Chutz, a Sarah Mishtaleach, because the Sarah Mishtaleach is Roy Lovo El Pesach. Now, what does it mean it's Roy Lovo El Pesach Ol Moed? We can't bring it as a carbon, it's Avodas Chutz, but the answer is we bring it into the Pesach Ol Moed for other reasons, for example, for the Agrola. And number two, for the vidui, right? Before we send it out to Azazel, we're going to go to recite a vidui in Pesach Ol Moed. So therefore, if somebody slaughters the Sorry Mishalech Bachutz, he's going to be chayav. That's the Gemara's kasha. I mean, the Bryce's kasha. Talmud Lomar. The answer is, it says, Lo hevi o la'akriv karban lashem. And the extra word lashem is going to teach me mi shemiyuchadim lashem. That's called kodshe mizbeach. Yotza elu, we now could exclude Sari Mishtalech from the din of Shkutei Chutz, Kevon, since She'en Yuchadim Lashem. After the Vidui and the Sawyer is sent LaZazel, then it has a different status. So this pasuk, Lashem, is being used to exclude Sari Mishtaleach from Shchutei Chutz, because it's not Lashem. Lashem means Miyuchad Lashem. I mean, this is Lazazel. It's not Lashem. And after the Vidui, the Sari is sent Lazazel. So it's not included in the parsha of Shchutei Chutz, which ends with the words Karban Lashem. So the Gemara now raises the following kasha. Are you telling me Lashem Lahotzi? Who? That when you see the word Lashem, it's coming to exclude Sarah Mishtalech. That's what it's coming to do. Even though we said it's Roy Lovely Old Moed for Hagrola, for Vidui. Nevertheless, the Torah excludes it under the word Lashem, because this is not a carbon that's Miyuchad Lashem. We're going to send it Lazazah. So therefore, you're not chayiv for Shkutei Chutz or Minu, but I'll ask you a steer from a brisa, because we learned a brisa with regard to the din of Mechutzar Zman, and it's within the 8 days since its birth, and you're not allowed to bring it as a karma because it's a dailo gia Yoma Shmini Militoso. And the Torah says, Shoro Kesev or Eiz Ki Volev Umiyoma Shmini Vahola Yeratzel Karbani Shel Hashem. And the Brisa darshans two words here. First of all, the word Ishe, Ishe. Elu Ishim. The Torah prohibits you enjoins you from putting onto the Eish HaMaracha this carbon, which is less than 8 days since its birth. And the Brisa explains, how do we know that we shouldn't be makdish this animal before its 8th day? Talmud Lomar, Karban, period. Which means that immediately he's magdish it, it's called a carbon, and therefore, as far as being magdish it, the Torah is makbid that he should have to wait until the 8th day and beyond. What about the extra word Lashem? L'rabos soya mishtalech, that this is considered roy lovo lifnei Hashem. And therefore, even this case, this soya mishtalech case should be an asur, even though it's mechusas man, because we have the word Lashem as a ribui for the soya mishtalech. And yet we implied from the Brisa that the word Lashem means lerabos soya mishtalech. Before we use shutei chutz, and we darshan the word Lashem lemayit soya mishtalech. So there's a head-on collision here. Amar Rava hasam minyani dekra v'hacha minyani dekra. So we're learning Rava again. Hasam minyani dekra v'hacha minyani dekra. And he says the following: Hasa, with regard to shchitas chutz, de, meaning the pasuk of quote El Pesach Ol Moed. It makes sense l'rabos to include Sar Mishtalech for the din of Shchutei Chutz, to include Sar Mishtalech, because it is considered royal Pesach Ol Moed. And therefore, when it says Lashem, it's a mute lahotzi to exclude and formulate the principle that only something which is miyuchad Lashem, then you're chayiv for Shchutei Chutz, but not Sar Mishtalech, which is not miyuchad Lashem, it's sent lazaza. Because the Torah came for ribui to include Sar Mishtalech in the chiyuv of Shchutei Chutz, we would not need the word Lashem. We already derived Sar Mishtalech as chayiv from El Pesach Mo'al Moed. But hacha, here with regard to Mechusas Man, the Isha, that the word Isha is lahotzi, it's an exclusion and a mute to exclude Sar Mishtalech, that it's not included in the Isser of Mechusas Man because it's not Ola Ishim Limizbeach. Now the word Lashem is coming as a ribui to tell you that something, anything that's Bo Lifnei Hashem, including the Sar Mishtalech, is included in the Isser of Mechusas Man. And why is it considered Bo Lifnei Hashem? As we said before, the Agroa and the Vidui all take place Lifnei Hashem. So the Gemara now says, why do we need a ribui to prohibit Mechusas Man in the case of Sar Mishtalech? Taima, the whole reason why Sar Mishtalech is possible if it's Mechusas Man is because the Rabbi Rachmana, that the Torah gave a special ribui in the pasuk, a special pasuk, the pasuk, lo Rabbi, implying that if there was no special ribui, Havamina Sar Mishtalech kadosh, even b'Mechusas Man, that's very difficult. When he brings the Shnei Asirim, he doesn't know which of the two is going to fall through the Gorel, the lottery, Lashem, which is going to go Lazazel. Va'en ha'gorel kovea ela b'seir sheroi Lashem. right? The Goral, when it's Kover the Seirim, and it's Kover that this particular Soyer will be Lashem, it's Soyer Sharoy Lashem. Those Bechlal Zeh, we can include in that, it's not Mechusas Man. So we don't know now which of the two Seirim is going to be Ola Lashem, and therefore we can't be Magdish either one of them in a case of Mechutzas Man, because maybe that one will turn out to be the one that's Lashem. So therefore, once again, why do we need a pasuk to be Marbe, Soyer Meshalech, and the Psul of Mechutzas Man, when it has to be included by definition? Because we don't know if this particular Soyer might be designated Lashem. And if it's designated Lashem, you can't be Magdish something that's Mechusas Man. On Rav Yosef Hamani, this brisa that requires a pasuk to prohibit being Magdish Hasar Mishalech when it's Mechusas Man, that reflects the sheet of Hanan Mitzri. He holds that if one of the two Seirim would die after the Hagrola, then we could just simply bring another Seir to replace it without Hagrola. And therefore, it would make sense to say that if the Seir Mishtalech died, it would be mutter to bring another Seir, even though it's Mechusas Man, to replace the Seir that died, even if it's not Royal Hashem, because in this case, there was already a Kvias of the Gorol on the other Seir that it would be Lashem. And this Seir that he's the Makdish right now is certainly for the purpose of Seir Mishtalech. And therefore we need a ribui from a pasuk to teach me that Mechutzas Man pasal Seir Mishtalech. And the Gemara explains now, where do we find Hanana Mitzri holding this? The Sanya we learned in the Brisa, Hanana Mitzri Omer, Afilu, even if you have a Soyer, Lashem, and it was shechted, and the dam was received and collected in a kos, and now we're ready for the Azah, nevertheless, if the Soyer Mishlech dies, we cannot do the Shvichas Adam of the Soyer Lashem. Maybe he's got to bring another Soyer, Avero, another one Minashuk, Umizdaveglo, and he attaches it, so to speak, as a partner to the Dam Sora Pnimi, and now he can bring that Sawyer from the Shuk, and the Dam will be kosher, and the other one will be a Sawyer HaMishtaleh. So we see clearly that Hanan Mitzri says that even a Sawyer that's for Shem, meaning the Sora Pnimi that was designated Lashem, if it was shechted and the Dam was received at a cost, and now it's Omid Lazah. Nevertheless, if the Sora Mishtalech dies, we cannot be Shofet the Dam. We bring another Soyer and Mizdaviglo. And once Mizdaviglo, the Dam Asar Pnimi, then the Sor that he brings from the Shuk becomes the Bat Zug, so to speak, the partner, and the Dam is kosher. And the other one will be Mishtaleh. So we see clearly that according to Hanan, we don't need a new, some sort of a brand new process of a new agrola to replace the old agrola. So the Gemara rejects this and says, "Emer deshamet le leChanan Mitzri." That's only the Lesle. He doesn't hold Hanan Mitzri the din of the Chuyim, and the dam in the kos is not considered dachui, and it's not disqualified, it's not possible, because the fact that the other partner, meaning the Mishtalech, died, and you don't have to pour out the dam. However, the Leslie, Hanan Mitzri doesn't accept the din of Hagrola in a case where the Sar Mishtalech died. Did we ever hear such a thing? He didn't mention a word about whether we need Hagrola or we don't need Hagrola. Yoma, perhaps. Hanana Mitzri holds, maybe Chaver Mizdaviglo, that means the Maisi Umagra. We're going to have to take two Seirim, do Hagrola, and one of them will turn out to be Lazazel, and that's the one that will join the original Soyer Lashem, such that the dam is not nifsal. And as far as the second Soyer, which is Ola Lashem, then that one is going to be Yira Achi Stoiv, and that's it. So we see that even according to Chanana Mitzri, we don't need a ribui to prohibit being Magdish Mechus's man in Soya Mishtaleach, because since we need a Hagrola, it's got to be Roy Hashem. And the Gorel is not going to be Kovea unless it's Roy Hashem. Elomar of Yosef Ha Mani, the Bryce that requires a apostle to prohibit being Mafresh, Soya Mishtaleach, which is Mechus's man. That reflects the sheet of Rabbi Shimoni, the Sanya we learned in the Brisa. Mace Echad Mehem, if one of the two seer die, maybe Chaver Shaloba Agrola Divrei Rabbi Shimon. So it's quite explicit that Rabbi Shimon holds that if one of them died, we don't need another Agrola. So therefore, if not for the Rebbe, the Pasuk to Asa Mechus's man, in the case of Samish Talech, we would have said, then in the situation in this scenario where you don't need Agrola, where Mes Sorry Mishtalech after the Gorol, then we are allowed to bring a replacement Sorry Mishtalech, even if it's Mechus's man, because we don't need it to be Roy for a Gorol Hashem. And therefore, we need the Brisa to teach me through a ribui, a special ribui, to prohibit Mechus's man in the case of a Sorry Mishtalech. Now we have an alternative answer. Rafina Omar, that ribui to prohibit Mechus's man in Sorry Mishtalech, we need it for a scenario in which Kigon, Shehumam, after they did the Agrola, the Sorry Mishtalech became blemished and it became puzzle. And it's fascinating that the Gemara later on is going to derive the conclusion that all the psulim of Mum apply to the Sorry Mishtalech, even though it's not Nikrav, it's not Avodas Pneu. The Chilalo, now he was Machal the Sorry Mishtalech, which became a Baal Mum, Al Acher, on another Soyer that will now replace it. In this case, says Ravina, we don't need a Hagrol, because the second Soyer is coming mikoach the first Soyer that was Ola Begoro. It's just replacing the Baal Mum. And therefore, we don't need it to be Roy Hashem. And therefore, we need a special ribui to passel it if it's Mechusas Man. The Gemara clarifies, so we know Temra de Pasel Be Muma. How do we know that the classic psul of Mum that applies to any Zebach applies to a Sorry Mishtaleach, even after Agrola? The Sanya, we learned in a Brisa with regard to Bali Mumin, this is a pasuk of Vayikra Chav Beis. It says, V'isha lo sitnu mehem al hamizbeach lashem. And the Brisa darshans now the word Isha. Isha means something that has achilas eish. Elu achalovim. You're not allowed to be makted a murim of a balmum on the fire of the mizbeach. Ainli ela kulan. I only could derive from this that it's also to be makter kulan. But how do we know miktsasan? Meaning, let's say you had only kizayis of in murim. How do you know it's also in a balmum case? Hamaloma mayhem. And the meaning, the implication of the word mayhem is to aser even miktas mayhem. Now the Brisa continues. It says in the pasuk al ha-mizbeach zo zrikas domin. You're not allowed to be zorik the dam of balmum on the mizbeach. Now we get to the word lashem. From the word lashem, l'rabo soyer mishtaleh. That even though it has a mum, even if that mum occurred after the Hagrola, nevertheless, the still applies. Sha'af bo mum posa. We need that the Torah teach me a ribui that about mum pasul sor mishtalech. Itzrich l'michtav mechutzes man, that you're not allowed to, that there's an Isur Mechusas Man in Sor Mishtalech. The Kosav Rachman, Torah had only told me the Isur Mechusas Man, we would have said then it's posel Mishum de lo moti zimne, עדיין לא הגיע הזמן שיוכשל לקורבן. אבל בעלמום דמותי זימני כבר הגיע הזמן להכשרו, is ema, I would have thought that as far as Balmum is concerned, low, there should be no psul of a sar mishtalech, even if it has a moon. And if the Torah had to tell me that there and teach me that there's a psul of Balmum, because Rahman, if the Torah had written that there's a psul Balmum, we would have said the dafka mum posel, but mishum demois. It's despicable. It's not royal avio kikarb. Avo makusus man to lo mois. Ema lo. Since there's no pgam in the guf hasoyer, in the case of makusus man, I would have thought it doesn't necessarily possible it. It's kosher. Let's see mitzaleh. Stricha. And if I need a special ribui, that even Balmum and also Mechus's mind for both of them to teach me that these two dinim apply to a Sar Mishtalech like they do to other Kodshim. Okay, then this is where we'll stop for today. And I wish everyone a great day. Thank you. Thank you so much.